Some part of you has always wanted to leave the ground and simply fly away. In dreams, that wish sometimes comes true. And the researchers who study lucid dreaming have found that flight there isn't random. It follows a method, one built less from muscle than from expectation. So once you know you're dreaming, how do you actually rise? And how do you steer? Here's the strange part. Even after you know you're dreaming, most first flights still stall, or sink, or quietly fade before you ever leave the ground. Even the dreamers who proved flight to science cannot summon it on command. Welcome to sleepy science. What the practiced dreamers learn is quieter than magic. It isn't a gift the sky hands you. It's expectation, rehearsed until the body half believes it can rise. And even then, it doesn't always answer. Let your body grow heavy and easy now, the way it does just before a dream decides to carry you somewhere you were never quite allowed to go. Tonight we follow one question down into the dark: how a dreaming mind learns to lift off and steer once it wakes up inside sleep. And where it begins is small. A single, quiet flicker of noticing that you are, in fact, asleep. Of all the things people do once they know they are dreaming, flying is among the most common. In surveys of lucid dreamers, rising off the ground appears again and again, often near the top of the list of what they choose to try first. There is something almost universal about it. The pull to leave the floor behind, to move through open air without wings or engine. Yet the experience is rarely simple. Some lift away easily, others struggle and sink back down. Underneath everything we explore tonight sits one quiet question. Once you realize you are dreaming, how do you actually take off? And once you are up there, how do you steer through the open air? Before flight comes lucidity, the strange moment of knowing, while it is happening, that you are inside a dream. Most nights, the mind accepts whatever the dream offers without question. A talking staircase, a face from long ago, a city that quietly rearranges itself. All of it passes as ordinary. Lucidity is the crack in that acceptance. The instant when some part of you notices the impossible and thinks, clearly, this is a dream. Nothing outward has to change. You do not wake. The dream continues around you, just as vivid as before. What shifts is only your relationship to it. You become, softly, an observer who knows where you are, and sometimes a participant who can begin to choose. The recognition rarely arrives from nowhere. Often it is triggered by a dream sign, something subtly wrong that the sleeping mind, for once, manages to catch. A clock whose numbers will not hold still. Text that changes when you look away and look back. A light switch that does nothing at all. Hands that seem to have too many fingers. These small failures of consistency are the seams of the dream world, and noticing one can tip you gently into lucidity. Experienced dreamers train themselves to spot such signs by questioning reality during waking hours, until the habit quietly follows them into sleep. The moment of realizing you are dreaming, then, is less a gift than a noticing. A question finally asked at just the right time. For a long time, science had no way to prove lucid dreaming was real. How do you confirm that someone is awake within a dream while their body lies asleep and still? The answer came through the eyes. During the vivid stage of sleep called REM, the body is held in paralysis, but the eyes still move. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, researchers, Keith Hearn in England, and then Stephen LeBerg at Stanford, asked lucid dreamers to signal with deliberate, prearranged eye movements the instant they became lucid. Left, right, left, right. Sleep recordings caught those exact movements during confirmed REM. It was a message sent from inside a dream to the waking world, and it changed how the science began. Lucid dreaming turns out to be far more common than it once seemed. When researchers gather the many surveys together, roughly half of all people report having had at least one lucid dream in their lives, and around a fifth say they have them monthly or more. It is not a rare talent held by a chosen few. It is a capacity that appears, at least occasionally, across cultures and ages, more often in the young, and in those who simply pay close attention to their dreams. And among all these lucid experiences, movement through the air keeps surfacing as a favorite. Flight, it seems, is one of the first destinations the dreaming mind reaches for, once it discovers it is free to reach at all. Picture the moment itself. You are somewhere ordinary and strange at once. A house that is yours but is not. A street that keeps folding quietly back on itself. Something feels off. You pause. You look down at your own hands, or try to read a nearby sign, and it will not behave. And then the thought lands, soft and certain. This is a dream. For many people, that recognition brings a flush of quiet excitement, and the very first impulse is to look up, at the ceiling, at the sky, and wonder whether they could rise toward it. The desire to fly and the arrival of lucidity are so closely linked that one often seems to call the other into being. The dream world runs on a rule the waking world does not share. It tends to obey what you expect. In a dream, there is no outside physics enforcing gravity, no real air that must be pushed against. The scene is generated by your own brain, moment to moment, and it leans toward whatever you anticipate will happen next. If you believe a door will open, it opens. If you fear the ground will hold you fast, it often does exactly that. This is why flight is possible at all. Not because you overpower gravity, but because, in a place made of expectation, gravity was only ever a habit of mind. Learning to fly, many dreamers say, is mostly learning to expect that you can. Nearly all lucid dreams, and nearly all dream flight, happen during REM sleep, the stage named for the rapid eye movements that flicker beneath closed lids. REM arrives in cycles through the night, growing longer toward morning, which is why lucidity and vivid flying dreams tend to cluster in those last hours before waking. During REM, the brain is intensely active, almost as busy as it is awake, while the body is held gently still by a natural paralysis that keeps you from acting your dreams out. Inside that paralysis, the mind builds entire worlds and moves through them freely. The stillness of the sleeping body and the flight of the dreaming mind are, in a acute sense, two halves of one single state. Something unusual happens in the brain when a dream becomes lucid. In ordinary dreaming, the front of the brain, the regions tied to self-awareness, reflection, and judgment, runs quieter than in waking life, which is part of why dreams feel so uncritically real. When lucidity dawns, brain recordings show a partial reawakening of exactly those frontal regions, along with a rise in fast electrical rhythms across the front of the head. It is as though a light switches softly back on in the part of you that knows who and where you are, while the dream keeps playing all around it. Lucidity, then, is not full waking and not pure dreaming. It is a rare blend of both, balanced on a narrow edge. Here, the question we began with starts to turn. We tend to imagine dream flight as a power you seize, a command you give, and the dream body simply obeys. But everything so far points somewhere gentler and stranger than that. In a world built from expectation, flight may be less something you force than something you allow. A belief the dream is willing to honor, if you can hold it steadily and without doubt. That reframing carries a quiet caution. If flight rests on expectation, it is as unsteady as belief itself. Learnable, perhaps, but never fully reliable. What lifts you one night may drop you the next. The skill, if it is a skill at all, seems to live in calm confidence, not in strain. When lucid dreamers are asked what they most want to do, and what they most often actually do, flying rises near the top nearly every time. Alongside it come other wishes: meeting someone, walking through walls, changing the whole scene. But flight has a particular hold on people. It seems to capture the entire promise of lucidity in a single act. The sudden freedom from the rules that bind ordinary waking life. To leave the ground is to feel, directly and unmistakably, that you are no longer in the everyday world. Perhaps that is why so many dreamers describe their first successful flight as unforgettable, not for where they went, but for the pure sensation of the floor quietly releasing them. There is no single way to fly in a dream. Ask a room full of lucid dreamers and you will hear a whole catalogue of methods. Some spread their arms and glide like a diver, tilting a shoulder to turn. Others describe a kind of slow swimming through the air, pulling themselves forward with long, patient strokes. A few simply will themselves upward and float, bodies loose, rising like smoke off a candle. Some take a running start and leap, and the leap never quite ends. Others need a prop, an umbrella, a staircase, imagined wings, to give belief something solid to hold. The variety is telling. Since the dream follows expectation, the method that works is often just the one the dreamer most deeply trusts. The takeoff is where many attempts quietly succeed or fail. Dreamers describe the first moment of leaving the ground as the most fragile, the instant when part of the mind still half expects to fall. Those who rise smoothly often report a small trick of attention. They look upward, fix their gaze on where they want to go, and let the body follow the looking rather than commanding it. Others feel a lightness begin in the chest or the stomach, a loosening before the feet ever lift. Push too hard, strain to launch by sheer force, and the ground tends to reassert itself. Ease into it, expecting to rise, and the dream more often lets you go. The difference between staying grounded and lifting away can be that subtle. Expectation does not only decide whether you fly, it shapes how you fly. Dreamers who expect flight to be slow and floating tend to drift. Those who expect speed can find themselves rushing over landscapes faster than any plane. Belief quietly sets the terms. This is why doubt is so costly once you are in the air. A single clear thought, "I might fall," can be enough to bend the dream toward falling. Because the world you move through is still being written by your own mind. Skilled dreamers speak less about technique and more about managing their own conviction. Holding the expectation steady, refusing to entertain the alternative. In a place made of belief, confidence is not merely a mood. It becomes a kind of steering. When you move in a dream, your brain does something remarkable. It behaves, in part, as if you were truly moving. Studies that recorded brain activity while lucid dreamers performed prearranged actions, clenching a dreamed hand, for instance, found the sensorimotor cortex lighting up in patterns close to those of the very same real movement. The body lay still, held by REM paralysis, yet the motor system rehearsed the action from the inside. This is the territory of motor imagery. Imagined movement that engages much of the same machinery as actual movement. Dream flight, seen this way, may be a vivid form of imagined motion. The flight your motor system quietly runs while your limbs stay resting on the bed. You have a body in your dreams, though it is not the one lying in your bed. This dream body has its own sense of shape and position, built by the brain from an inner model called the body schema, the living map of where your limbs are and how they move. In dreams, that map keeps running, unhooked from the still, sleeping form. That is why flight can feel so physical. You sense your arms extend, your torso tilt, the rush of air along a body that, in the room, has not moved at all. The dream body is a kind of simulation, faithful enough to carry real sensation. When you fly, it is this simulated self, and not your resting one, that lifts and leaves the ground. Ask dreamers what flying actually feels like, and the descriptions turn strikingly bodily. There is the drop in the belly on a sudden rise, the sense of wind moving past the face, the weightless slack in the limbs, the small adjustments of balance as they bank and turn. None of this is coming from the senses. The eyes are closed. The air in the room is still. It is generated entirely from within, the brain producing the feeling of motion without any motion at all. This inner sensation, a dreamed cousin of proprioception, is part of why lucid flight can feel more real than a memory. The mind is not picturing flight from the outside. It is manufacturing the whole experience of being the one who flies. Dream flight is famously easy to lose. Many lucid dreamers describe rising beautifully, then feeling the scene begin to blur, the colors thin, the dream itself threatening to dissolve around them. Excitement is often the culprit. The thrill of flying can stir the sleeping brain toward waking, and the dream fades just as it gets good. Others find that a sudden flash of doubt sends them drifting back to earth, or that they simply forget they are dreaming and slip back into ordinary, unaware sleep. Flight sits on the same narrow edge as lucidity itself, and that edge is not stable. This is the honest heart of it, the ability to fly. When it does come, tends to come briefly, and rarely quite on command. Not everyone who becomes lucid can fly, and among those who can, the ease of it varies widely. Some dreamers rise on their very first lucid night, as if they had somehow always known how. Others try for months and manage only clumsy hops, or find themselves stuck to the ground, no matter how firmly they will themselves upward. The same person may fly effortlessly one night and fail completely the next. There is no fixed threshold, no guaranteed method that works alike for all. This variability is itself a clue about what flight really is. A reliable physical skill would improve steadily with practice. Dream flight improves unevenly, in fits and starts, more like a knack of belief than a technique the body simply learns and keeps. Across nearly every account, the same quiet variable keeps appearing: confidence. The dreamers who fly most freely are not the ones who try hardest, but the ones who doubt least. They expect the open air to hold them the way you expect a solid floor to hold you, without a second thought. Doubt, by contrast, behaves almost like weight. Hesitate. Wonder whether it will truly work. And the dream tends to answer the hesitation rather than the wish. This is why dream control is so slippery to teach. You cannot simply instruct someone to believe. Confidence inside a dream is built slowly, through experiences that prove to the dreamer, again and again, that the impossible really does seem to bend to expectation here. Flying and falling are far closer than they seem. Both are dreams of a body moving through open space with nothing beneath it, and the line between them can be crossed in an instant. A dreamer soaring calmly may feel a sudden spike of fear, and the soaring becomes a plunge. Others learn to reverse it, to catch a fall and turn it, mid-air, into flight by simply deciding to rise. The shared ingredient is the loss of solid ground, and how the mind chooses to read that loss. Fear reads it as falling, confidence reads it as flight. The raw sensation can be nearly identical. What differs is the story the dreaming mind tells about it. And in a dream, the story is what comes true. Because lucidity can be practiced, so, in a limited way, can flight. Dreamers who want to fly are often advised to first become reliably lucid, through habits like checking reality during the day, keeping a careful dream journal, or briefly waking in the night and returning to sleep with the intention held in mind. Onse, lucid. They rehearse flight in imagination while awake and set a clear expectation, before sleep, of rising into the air. None of this guarantees success. It shifts the odds, gently. Flight behaves less like riding a bicycle, mastered once and then kept for good, and more like a mood you can invite but never quite summon. You can prepare the ground for it. You cannot promise yourself it will come. Much of what we know about dream flight comes from the dreamers themselves, from journals, surveys, and careful reports of what the experience was like from the inside. The eye signal studies proved that lucidity is real and can be timed. Brain recordings show the motor system stirring during dreamed movement. But the felt texture of flight, the joy, the wind, the sense of release, lives in first-person accounts that no instrument can fully capture. This makes the subject unusual, rigorous at its edges, deeply personal at its center. It asks us to hold two things at once: the measured findings of the laboratory and the honest testimony of people describing something that happened only to them, in the dark, alone. It helps to say plainly what dream flight is not. It is not a sign or an omen, not a message about your fate or your soul, not proof that some part of you leaves the body in the night. Those are old and lovely stories, and they are not what the evidence describes. Dream flight is a neurocognitive event. The sleeping brain, partly self-aware, generating a vivid experience of motion in a world it is building from expectation. That plainer account takes nothing away. If anything, it deepens the wonder that a resting brain can manufacture the full sensation of soaring from nothing but its own quiet activity, is stranger and more real than any omen could ever hope to be. Gather what these first facts have shown, and a shape begins to appear. Flight is not a power the lucid mind switches on, but an expectation the dream agrees to honor. Vivid, bodily, built by the very motor systems that move you when you are awake, and no steadier than the confidence that holds it. So the question we opened has quietly changed beneath us. We began by asking how dreamers take off and steer. Now we can see that taking off is only half the mystery. The harder question is how belief becomes motion at all. How an expectation in the mind turns into the felt rush of flight. That is what the next stretch begins to follow, moving from what flight is toward how it works. The ground has been loosening its hold on you as we go. Your breath slower now. Your body a little lighter. A quiet subscribe helps another restless mind find this open air too. Now let's drift together for a moment, one sleepy soul at a time. Right now, The parts of your brain that move your arms are quieter than they were an hour ago. Not switched off, only resting. The way they rest each night just before a dream borrows them. You heard how the motor system stirs for a movement the body never makes. That same machinery is idling in you at this moment, waiting, harmless, ready to build a body that could rise. The question that just opened, how a belief becomes the felt rush of flight, is not abstract at all. It lives in this exact stillness, in a system that can move you without moving you an inch. Feel how little effort your breathing takes. Something in you already knows how to act while the body stays completely at rest. That is where the next facts begin to lead. So begin where the last stretch left off. Not with the fact of knowing you dream, but with the puzzle of how that knowing turns into motion. A dreamer forms the wish to rise, and something in the dream answers. The body lifts, though no muscle has stirred. What bridges the two? The silent intention and the felt assent is not yet fully understood, and the leading explanations remain contested. Yet the reports are strikingly consistent. You look up. You mean to climb, and the dream obliges, behaving less like a machine than a collaborator that has been listening. The stretch ahead follows that bridge inward, asking how an expectation becomes the actual rush of flight. Consider what happens when you merely imagine a movement. Even while your body stays perfectly still, picturing yourself raising an arm activates many of the same sensorimotor regions that would fire if you actually raised it. This is motor imagery, and it is measurable in ordinary waking brains. The prevailing model of dream flight builds on this. When a lucid dreamer intends to move, the brain may run the same simulation, only far more vividly. The intention to push off the ground could recruit real motor planning circuitry. Whether dreamed flight is simply motor imagery amplified remains debated. But the overlap is one of the most suggestive clues researchers have found. There is a striking experiment worth sitting with. Lucid dreamers, wired for brain imaging, agreed to clench their dreamed hands on a prearranged signal, marking each action with their eyes. When they did, the sensorimotor cortex, the strip of brain that governs real hand movement, lit up in patterns resembling waking motion. The dreamed hand, in other words, appeared to move a real region of the brain. If clenching a fist can do this, the model suggests, so might the larger act of taking flight. The finding comes from very few sleepers and is hard to replicate, and researchers treat it cautiously. Still, it hints that dreamed movement is not purely imaginary. Now notice the paradox holding all of this together. While your dreamed self soars, your physical body has not moved at all. During REM sleep, the brainstem releases signals that switch off the motor neurons controlling your limbs, producing a near-total paralysis called muscle atonia. Its purpose appears protective. It keeps you from physically acting out the vivid motion your brain is generating. So the commands to fly may be issued in full, then blocked before they reach a single muscle. your legs stay heavy on the mattress while, somewhere above them, you climb. The flight is real to the brain and invisible to the room. Picture the strange loop this creates. Your motor system drafts the command to lift off, but atonia intercepts it before your body can respond. What returns to the brain is not the usual feedback of moving muscles, because the muscles never moved. Some researchers propose that the dreaming brain fills this gap with prediction, supplying the sensations that movement should have produced. You feel yourself rise not because you rose, but because the brain expected to. In this model, flight is built almost entirely from the inside. An intended motion, a predicted result, and no outside signal to contradict it. Whether this is truly how it works remains an open question. Underneath the flying is a body you may never think to question. One your brain has quietly built. Neuroscientists call it the body schema, an internal map of where your limbs are and what they can do. In waking life, it hews closely to your real form. In dreams, freed from sensory correction, that map becomes fluid. It can stretch, lighten, or shed the rules of weight entirely. The self that lifts into a dreamed sky is running on this pliable schema, not on your sleeping frame. This flexibility may be why flight feels so natural in dreams. The body doing it was never bound by gravity to begin with. Ask a lucid dreamer how they leave the ground, and the answers vary in a telling way. Some describe a swimmer's push, others a leap that simply keeps going, others a pure act of will with no movement at all. What they share is a moment where intention seems to convert directly into lift. In the dominant model, this reflects the brain generating both the motor command and its imagined consequence at once, with nothing physical in between to slow it. The looseness of technique. That flight can be launched so many ways. Hints that no single mechanism is required. The dreamer supplies the wish, and the simulation supplies the rest. Feel, for a moment, where the sensation of rising actually lives. In waking life, the vestibular system, a set of fluid-filled canals deep in each inner ear, tells you when you accelerate, tilt, or fall. It is the reason an elevator's first lurch registers in your stomach. During dreamed flight, this same system appears to be engaged from within, without any real motion to detect. Researchers suspect the brain drives its own balance circuitry directly, generating the felt swoop of lift or the drop of a dive. The organ built to sense movement is, in the dream, being fed movement that isn't happening, and it answers as if it were real. This may help explain one of the most visceral dream sensations of all: the falling that jolts you awake. If the sleeping brain can stir the vestibular system on its own, then a dreamed plunge could produce a genuine sense of dropping, complete with the lurch in the chest. Some accounts tie the familiar falling jerk to this internal signaling colliding with the body's stillness. For a lucid flyer, the same machinery seems to work in reverse, sustaining the buoyant, weightless glide rather than the fall. It is a contested picture, assembled from partial evidence. But it suggests that flight and falling in dreams may draw on one shared, self-generated sense of balance. Once aloft, the question becomes how to steer. And here the reports grow almost playful. Some lucid dreamers bank like birds, tilting a shoulder to turn. Others adopt the outstretched pose of a comic book hero. Many find that simply looking where they want to go is enough to carry them there. Researchers note that gaze and intention seem to govern dreamed motion more than any limb ever could. In the working model, steering is another act of prediction. You intend a direction, and the simulation renders the turn. The body's usual controls are gone, so the dream leans on the one instrument still fully yours: attention itself. What surprises people most is how physical it feels. Dreamers describe wind against the face, the pull of speed, the specific lightness of a body with no weight to carry. These sensations arrive without any of their normal sources. No moving air, no rushing ground. The brain appears to be generating proprioception and touch from within, painting the felt texture of flight onto a body lying still. In the contested model, this is the same predictive machinery at work. The brain doesn't merely move the dreamed self. It supplies every sensation that movement should bring. The realism isn't an illusion layered on top. It may be the whole construction, sensed from inside. There is a concept that ties these threads together, and it comes from ordinary neuroscience. Whenever you move, your brain sends a copy of each motor command, an efference copy, to predict the sensation that movement will cause. It is how you know your own arm is lifting before you fully feel it. Researchers propose that dreamed flight may be this system running with the outside world removed. The brain issues the command, forecasts the sensation, and, with no real feedback to correct it, simply experiences the forecast as fact. If true, flight would feel real for the plainest of reasons. The same trick your brain uses every waking second, now running unopposed. Not everyone finds the sky so willing. Some lucid dreamers lift off effortlessly on their first attempt. Others strain and stay earthbound, or rise only to sink back down. What seems to separate them is less skill than expectation. Those who believe flight is possible in the dream tend to achieve it. Those who doubt often find the ground holding on. Researchers reading these accounts see a clue about how the dreaming mind works. That in a world built from prediction, what you expect may shape what the simulation delivers. The doubt is not a small thing. It appears to feed back into the very motion the brain is trying to render. Sit with that loop for a moment, because it may be the heart of the matter. If dreamed flight is built from motor commands and their predicted sensations, then belief becomes part of the machinery. Expecting to rise strengthens the prediction. Doubting it weakens the very signal that would carry you up. The dreamer is, in a sense, both the pilot and the sky, issuing the intention and generating the world that answers it. This is why lucid flight is so often described as a matter of surrender rather than force. You do not overpower the dream. You quietly convince the part of you that is already building it. Draw these strands together now. Every part of dreamed flight has led back inside the sleeping brain. The intended push, the silenced muscles, the balance sense stirred without motion, the sensations forecast and then felt. The question we began with was how a lucid dreamer takes off and steers. It is quietly becoming a larger one. If the brain can build a convincing sky and a weightless body from prediction alone, flight may be less a thing you do than a world you persuade yourself into. And if the mind can construct all this while the body lies perfectly still, a quieter question waits. What such vivid dreaming asks of the sleeping brain, and what it is for. Something in you has grown lighter as we've followed all this rising and turning. Your body is resting fully now, held by the bed, asking nothing of you. No push, no lift, only weight settling into stillness. Let one slow breath rise and fall on its own, and let it go. Everything we've traced tonight is built by a quiet mind at rest. Yours is simply here, unhurried, going nowhere it doesn't wish to. We'll drift on, slowly. Something shifts the instant you know for certain that you are dreaming. The walls stop frightening you. Gravity begins to feel more like a suggestion than a law. Experienced lucid dreamers describe this first breath of certainty as the true launchpad. Not any single motion of the body, but the quiet conviction that rising is already allowed. In their accounts, the dream tends to answer whatever you most expect of it. Approach the air with doubt, and your feet stay heavy on the floor. Approach it as though flight was simply the next natural thing to do. And the ground, they say, begins to loosen its hold. Reports vary, yet this thread runs through nearly all of them. Perhaps the most familiar way to leave the ground is the one children draw. Dreamers reach one arm forward and let the other trail behind, or open both wide like wings. Borrowing the pose, the mind already links with flight. The gesture moves no air. There is none to move, but it seems to give expectation a shape to hold. By assuming a body language you have seen 1,000 times, you tell the dream, without a word, exactly what you intend. Many report that this cinematic posture lifts them effortlessly, the horizon tilting as their feet leave the floor. It will not work the same for everyone, yet it remains the most commonly described takeoff of all. Some prefer to begin instead with a single, deliberate leap. You bend your knees inside the dream, push upward as if to hop, and then, crucially, you expect never to come down. That expectation, dreamers insist, is the whole of the trick. The jump is not what carries you, it is only a doorway, a way of asking the dream a question. If some part of you still braces for the landing, you land. But if you release that bracing entirely, assuming the ground has simply finished with you, many describe hanging weightless at the top of the hop, then drifting slowly upward instead of falling back. The leap opens the moment, and belief is what keeps it open. a gentler variation asks almost nothing of your legs at all. Rather than leaping, dreamers describe pressing lightly against the floor with the soles of their feet, or even with a single hand, as though the ground beneath them was soft and buoyant, and then letting that faint push float them upward, the way a swimmer rises off the bottom of a warm pool. The motion is small, unhurried, almost lazy. What matters, in report after report, is treating the surface beneath you as something to leave rather than something to stand upon. Push down softly. Expect to rise. And the rising, they say, obliges. As always, the very same push serves different dreamers in different measure. Once the ground releases you, many dreamers treat the empty air as though it were water. They sweep their arms in a slow breaststroke, pulling the space toward them and pushing it behind, drawing forward with each unhurried stroke. Some add a lazy kick, as if gliding beneath a warm surface. Nothing about this could move a waking body through real air. But inside the dream, the familiar rhythm of swimming gives the mind a motion it already trusts, and the scene tends to cooperate. It offers a way to steer as well, each stroke nudging you toward wherever you face. Dreamers describe it as the most relaxed way to travel, though its reliability, like everything here, varies. Where your eyes go, many dreamers say, the rest of you tends to follow. A widely shared technique is to lift your gaze, to fix your attention on a distant point high above the horizon and keep looking there, as though you could reel yourself toward it with sight alone. Some imagine a fine thread running from that far point down into their chest, drawing them upward. The body seems to drift in the direction of the held gaze, rising as the eyes rise. Look down toward the ground. They warn, and you may sink, look up and outward, and the ascent tends to continue on its own. Attention, here, behaves less like sight and more like a rudder. Notice what every one of these methods quietly shares. The Superman arms, the leap, the soft push, the swimmer's stroke, the lifted gaze. None of them generates lift the way a wing or an engine would. What they truly do, dreamers and researchers of the experience alike suggest, is organize your expectation, giving belief a familiar body to move through. The dream appears to respond far less to the mechanics of the motion than to the certainty behind it. This is why two people can perform the same gesture and only one will rise. The difference lives not in the arms, but in the assumption. Expectation, again and again, seems to be the real engine of dream flight. This is also why so many first flights end almost as soon as they begin. A single flicker of doubt, one thought quietly, asking whether this is really possible, tends to act like sudden weight, and dreamers describe dropping the very instant that question arrives. The mind, it seems, cannot fully expect two opposite outcomes at once. Seasoned lucid dreamers learn to meet the doubt without arguing with it. They let it pass like a cloud, keep their gaze lifted, and gently renew the assumption that they are already flying. The skill, they say, is less about forcing belief than about not interrupting it. Steadiness of expectation, not strain, is what keeps a dreamer in the air. You have just heard how a single doubt can become weight, and how the ones who stay aloft do not fight that doubt, but simply let it drift on past. Notice, wherever you are resting now, how little you are being asked to hold, how the effort of proving anything has quietly loosened its grip on you. Let one long breath leave you completely, and let the next one arrive on its own, entirely unforced. There is nothing here to keep aloft by trying. You can trust the drifting, the way a dreamer slowly learns to trust the air. What comes next moves from rising into steering, from leaving the ground to choosing, softly, where the going goes. Rising, it turns out, is only the first half of the art. Once you are airborne, dreamers describe steering much the way they first took off, with attention rather than muscle. To turn, you look where you wish to go and let your body lean into the glance to climb. You tilt your gaze upward to slow. You soften the intention and hang there. Some point with an outstretched arm, letting it lead like the needle of a compass. Speed, too, seems to answer expectation. Assume a gentle drift, and you drift. Assume a headlong rush, and the scenery blurs past. The same quiet certainty that lifted you becomes, once aloft, the hand upon the wheel. Gather what these accounts have quietly been saying. We began by asking how a lucid dreamer takes off and steers once the dream is recognized. And the answer, method by method, keeps pointing away from technique toward expectation itself. The arms, the leap, the lifted gaze are not engines but instructions, ways of telling the dream what you already believe. Yet a stranger question now opens beneath the first. If belief alone can lift you, it can also shape the sky you fly through, the clouds, the ground you pushed away. What the coming hour follows is no longer how to leave the earth, but how far a certain mind can remake the world it moves within. The moment the dream begins to feel thin, many lucid dreamers reach for their own hands and rub the palms slowly together. In lucid dreaming circles, this is the most commonly shared stabilization trick, passed along as the first thing to try when the scene starts to fade at the edges. Practitioners describe the friction as a way of pouring attention back into the dream body, giving the senses something warm and textured to hold onto. Whether it reliably keeps you asleep has never been settled in a controlled study, so it stays a reported technique whose success drifts from one night to the next. What people believe the hand rubbing is doing is quietly interesting. The idea, as dreamers describe it, is that a dream survives on sensory detail, and when detail thins, the whole world grows pale and slips away. By flooding the imagined skin with warmth and motion, you crowd out the awareness of your real, still body lying in bed. Remember that during this dreaming stage, your actual muscles are held almost completely limp, so the hands you feel rubbing are woven entirely from the mind. It is a soft trick of attention, unproven in the lab, yet described again and again by those who fly. Another well-known move is to spin. When the dream shudders as though about to end, some dreamers turn their whole dream body in a slow circle. Arms loose, eyes soft, letting the imagined world blur around them. The lucid dreaming teacher who popularized this in the 1980s suggested it could either steady a fading dream or carry you gently into a new scene. People report landing somewhere else entirely. A different room, a different sky. Like the others, it is a self-reported method with uneven results. Offered here not as instruction, but as one of the quiet things travelers try. Some prefer to reach out and touch, pressing a palm flat against a wall, curling fingers around a railing, running a hand along rough bark. Dreamers use texture the way a sailor uses ballast. The reasoning they give is that a demand for detail forces the dream to render more of itself, and a richer world is a more stable one. A few will even lift something close to their face and study it, asking silently for sharper grain, deeper color. None of this has firm experimental backing. It survives instead as folklore of the sleeping mind, tender and practical, tested only in the dark. There are dreamers who simply speak to the dream, aloud in the imagined air, or only in thought. They say something like, "Clarity now," or ask for the scene to grow more vivid. It sounds almost like a spell, and in a way it behaves like one, because the dream so often answers the shape of what you expect. Colors reportedly brighten, blur sharpens, the ground grows firm. Whether the words matter or only the expectation behind them, no study can yet say. What people describe is a strange courtesy between a mind and the world it is quietly building for itself. Once the dream holds steady, the question becomes how to move through the sky. And here the most repeated answer is the gaze. Look where you wish to go, dreamers say, and the flight tends to follow the eyes. Turn your attention toward a distant hill and you drift toward it. Glance down and you may begin to sink. It resembles the way a cyclist steers toward whatever they stare at on the road. Reported across countless personal accounts, yet never measured cleanly. This coupling of sight and motion is one of the gentlest tools a flying dreamer is said to have. Beneath the gaze sits something subtler. Intention. Many describe steering not by looking alone, but by a quiet, inner decision. A wish already treated as done. You do not strain toward the horizon so much as assume you are already headed there, and the dream fills in the path. Experienced lucid dreamers talk about this lightness of command as the real skill, learned slowly over many nights. It cannot be proven from the outside, and it fails as often as it works. Still, the pattern in these accounts is consistent enough to be worth naming. Softly, has expectation doing the steering. Getting off the ground has its own small repertoire. Some dreamers dive forward like a swimmer and let the floor fall away. Others crouch and leap, trusting they will not come down. A few simply lean back into the air as though into water and rise. The teacher who studied these reports noted that the method rarely matters as much as the certainty behind it, the private conviction that the air will hold. Doubt, by the same accounts, is what drops you. None of it is established science, only a gathered chorus of people describing the moment their weight let go. Altitude. In these stories, answers to belief more than to effort. To climb. Dreamers report lifting their eyes and expecting the ground to recede, to descend. They let attention settle downward and feel themselves lower like a slow tide. Some picture a thread drawing them up. Others simply decide they are higher and find that they are. There is no throttle, no wings that must beat harder. The body you are flying was never bound by the physics of muscle and lift. What guides its height, by every account, is the quiet arithmetic of what you assume the sky will do. Speed is where many first lose their footing in the air. Dreamers describe a common early mistake: wanting to go faster. They push too hard, and the world blurs, tilts, or dissolves as the excitement itself unsettles the dream. The counsel passed around is to hold speed the way you would hold a slow breath, steady and unhurried, letting the landscape stream past without grasping at it. Overcorrection, they warn, wakes you. It is a delicate balance, entirely self-reported, but it points at something real about this state. The calmer the pilot, the longer and gentler the flight. Threaded through all of these tricks is a single reported principle. In the dreaming mind, expectation writes the physics. Look for a flaw, and a flaw appears. Assume you will fall. Often, you fall. Dreamers call it the expectation effect. And the sleep researcher who named it argued the dream world behaves less like a place than like an answer to your beliefs about it. This is why doubt is treated as the true hazard of flight. Nothing here is settled science. Yet the same lesson returns in account after account. Calm and consistent, as though the sky were listening. There is a real reason a dream can be steered at all, and it lives in the front of the brain. During ordinary dreams, the prefrontal cortex, the seat of choosing and reflecting, runs quiet. In a lucid dream, brain recordings show patches of that region flickering back toward waking activity, along with faster rhythms across the front of the head. That partial return is what lets a sleeper notice the dream and make decisions inside it. The steering, the spinning, the choice to look toward a distant hill, all rest on this small, measured reawakening of the deciding mind. While that dream self banks and climbs, the sleeping body does almost nothing at all. In this stage of sleep, the brain sends a signal that softens the muscles into near total stillness, a natural paralysis that keeps you from acting out what you dream. So the arms you spread to glide are not your real arms. They lie quiet at your sides. The soaring is entirely internal, a flight staged by the nervous system while the body rests flat and safe. Knowing this, some dreamers find the fear of falling loosens, because there is, in truth, nothing solid left to fall. It helps to understand that you are not steering with the body you know. There are no muscles to flex, no wings to angle, only a stream of small inner decisions the dream keeps answering. Experienced dreamers describe learning to trust this, to stop reaching physically and instead let a light, settled intention do the work. The ones who struggle, they say, are usually still trying to fly the way a body flies, straining against air that was never there. Reported, unmeasured, but strikingly uniform. The flight softens the instant you stop, treating it as effort and let it become choice. Gather these reports together and the question you began with quietly turns. You asked how a lucid dreamer takes off and steers, expecting an answer made of technique, of hands and spins and spoken commands. Yet each trick, looked at closely, does the same thing. It manages what you expect. The steering was never a set of controls. It was a negotiation with your own certainty. And the certainty is the harder thing to hold. So the real question shifts from how you move the dream to how you keep faith with it. And that is where the failures begin to teach. The most familiar failure is joy itself. Dreamers again and again describe the same heartbreak. The flight becomes glorious. Delight surges up. And in that instant, they wake. The sky snapping shut like a closed book. The likeliest reason is that strong excitement nudges the sleeping brain back toward waking, breaking the fragile chemistry that holds this stage in place. The dreaming mind seems to tolerate wonder only when it stays soft. It is one of the cruelest lessons of the practice, well attested in personal accounts, even if never charted precisely. Feel too much, too suddenly, and the dream lets go of you. What happens in that moment has a plausible shape. This stage of sleep runs on an unusual chemistry, with certain alerting signals turned unusually low, and it is thought that a sharp emotional spike can push those signals back up and tip the brain toward arousal. A jolt of excitement, in other words, may act like a small alarm. Dreamers who fly often describe learning to greet beauty quietly, to notice the vast landscape below without letting the feeling crest. The science here is inference more than proof, but it fits the reports. The flight lasts longest for those who stay serene. So the seasoned advice is almost meditative. When wonder rises, dreamers say, let it pass through you like a long, slow breath rather than seizing it. Some deliberately soften their gaze, slow their imagined motion, and speak a quiet word to steady the scene. Others simply remind themselves, calmly, that it is a dream and there is nowhere to hurry. The goal is a kind of alert stillness, awake enough to know, calm enough to stay. None of this is clinically verified, yet it echoes what we do know about how easily this delicate state is broken by a surge of feeling. Not every failure ends in waking. Some end in forgetting. Dreamers describe flying with full awareness, and then, gradually, the knowing slips, until they are simply dreaming again, swept along in a story with no memory that they were ever the pilot. Lucidity, it seems, is not a switch but a small flame that must be tended, and the front of the brain that holds it can quietly dim back toward ordinary sleep. You do not always notice it go. One moment the sky is yours, the next you are a passenger again, and only on waking do you realize you drifted. To guard against that fading, dreamers carry a habit inward. Every so often, mid-flight, they perform a small check, glancing at a hand, trying to press a finger through a palm, reading a sign twice to see if the letters hold. In dreams, these tests reportedly come out strange. The finger passing through, the words rewriting themselves. And the strangeness rekindles the awareness that this is a dream, practiced by day until it becomes reflex. The check is meant to follow you into sleep. It is the most studied of these habits, though how well it sustains a flight remains, like the rest, uncertain. There is also a natural erosion that has nothing to do with emotion. Dreams simply tend to destabilize over time, and flyers describe the world beginning to gray at the edges, colors draining, detail going soft, as though the scene were running low on some quiet fuel. Left alone, this drift ends the dream. It seems to be a feature of how the sleeping brain sustains a dream at all, a stability that must be continually renewed rather than one that holds by itself. Recognizing the graying early, dreamers say, is what gives you the chance to act before the sky dissolves. And so the stabilizing tricks return, now as rescue rather than routine. At the first fading, dreamers spin, or rub their hands, or seize a nearby texture and demand its grain, pouring sensation back into the world to hold it open a little longer. Some report pulling a collapsing flight back into vividness this way, the sky brightening again around them. Others feel it slip regardless. What these accounts share is a rhythm of noticing decay, answering it, flying on, an ongoing tending rather than a thing achieved once. The dream, it seems, is never simply held. It is kept, breath by breath. Among all the fears that can end a flight, the oldest is falling. Some dreamers, high above an imagined land, feel the ancient dread rise, and in that state the dread is dangerous, because the dream so readily grants whatever you expect. Anticipate the drop, and the drop can come. Yet the same accounts describe a strange mercy. Even when they do fall, the ground rarely delivers the pain the body braces for. Often they pass through it, or wake, or simply land unhurt. The fear, it turns out, is heavier than the fall it imagines. Nothing here can truly break. Let the flying carry itself now. Notice how little it asks of you. No reaching, no effort in the arms. Only a soft certainty that the air will hold. Feel the landscape moving quietly beneath a body that weighs nothing here. Something is gathering toward a single, quiet understanding that the sky was answering you all along. There is nowhere you must steer, nothing you must grip, Let the breath lengthen. Let the ground stay far below and harmless. Whatever you were braced against, you can loosen your hold on it and drift, and let the dream keep you. Dreamers who make peace with the fall describe a turning point in the whole practice. Once you truly trust that the ground cannot hurt you here, the fear that used to end flights loses its grip, and with it goes much of the tension that unsettled the dream. Some deliberately let themselves drop, arms open, to prove it, and rise again laughing softly, steadier than before. This is not courage so much as recognition, a remembering of where you actually are. It cannot be measured from the outside, yet across accounts it marks the same threshold. The sky grows kind the moment you stop expecting it to betray you. So how does a lucid dreamer take off and steer once they know they are dreaming? The gathered answer, offered gently and still contested, is that flight is a conversation with your own expectation. You steer with your gaze because the dream follows your attention. You steady it with your senses because detail is what holds the world together. You stay aloft by staying calm, since feeling too much breaks the spell. The sky becomes as real, as high, as kind as your belief allows. Not a machine to be mastered, then, but a quiet agreement, renewed for as long as you can keep faith with it. Before sleep, you can plant a single, quiet intention. Tonight, if I realize I am dreaming, I will rise. Researchers call this technique mnemonic intention, and it works by leaving a gentle bookmark in memory. You need not force it. Simply repeat the thought as you drift, letting it soften into the dark. The mind carries small promises into dreams more often than we expect, and this one asks almost nothing of you. Expectation quietly shapes what a dream allows. If you fall asleep, believing flight is possible, your dreaming mind tends to agree. Studies of lucid dreamers find that belief functions almost like physics inside the dream. What you expect becomes what unfolds. This is why the first flight is often less about technique and more about permission. You are not fighting gravity. You are simply no longer assuming it applies. A brief rehearsal, done while still awake, can prepare the launch. Picture yourself lifting from the ground, the loosening in your legs, the tilt of the horizon, the air holding your weight. Athletes use the same kind of mental practice, and the sleeping brain treats rehearsed movement as something familiar. When lucidity arrives, your body more readily recalls the shape of rising. There is no need to rehearse for long. A single soft imagining is enough. The realization often arrives as a small, clear thought. This is a dream. In that instant, the ordinary rules loosen their grip. Many lucid dreamers say the first impulse, almost universal, is to look up and want to fly. It is as if the mind, suddenly free, reaches for the one thing waking life forbids. Hold that moment gently. Excitement can wake you, so let the knowing settle before you lift. Takeoff rarely needs a running start. Most lucid flyers begin with something small, a gentle hop, a lean forward, a decision to simply not come back down. The ground seems to release you as you stop expecting it to hold you. Some describe it as swimming upward through thick, warm air. Others feel a soft tug from above. However it begins for you, the launch is less an effort than a permission slowly granted. There is no single way to fly. Some dreamers hold their arms forward and glide like a diver. Others float upright, rising as gently as a lantern. A few move by intention alone, simply looking where they wish to go and arriving there. The style you choose often reflects how you move through waking life, cautious or bold, drifting or aimed. In dreams, the body becomes a language, and flight is one of its softest words. Beginners often wobble. You lift a few feet, then feel an old certainty return, the assumption that things must fall. And so you dip toward the ground. This is not failure, it is belief catching up with you. The dream is only reflecting a habit of expectation. Each time you rise again, the habit loosens. Flight in dreams is less a skill of the body than a quiet argument with everything you were taught about weight. To steady a wavering flight, many dreamers use their gaze. Fix your eyes on a distant point, a rooftop, a cloud, the horizon's edge, and move toward it. Direction gives the dream something to build. Others simply state where they wish to go, and the scene arranges itself. Steering, it turns out, is rarely about the arms or legs. It is about attention. Where you place your focus, the flight quietly follows. The first true flight is something people rarely forget. Dreamers describe a lightness that seems to reach the bones, a sense of the whole body exhaling at once. The ground falls away, soft and unresisting, and the air feels almost tender. Because lucid dreams engage the senses so fully, the wind, the height, and the freedom register as real. Many wake with the feeling still warm in their chest, long after the images have faded. For some, flight brings tears. In the release of rising, old weight seems to loosen. Grief, worry, the quiet ache of holding too much for too long. Dream researchers have noted that lucid flight often carries a strong emotional charge, a sense of joy or freedom that surprises the dreamer. It is as if the mind, given permission to let go, uses the sky to set something down. You may not know what lifts until it is gone. In waking life, the body has edges. What it can lift, how far it can reach, how long it can stand. Flight quietly dissolves them. For a few minutes in the dream, there is no ground to be tired against, no distance too far, no weight to carry. People who live with pain or limitation sometimes describe lucid flight as a rare visit to a body that no longer hurts. The sky asks nothing of the bones. Flight can also be a way to meet fear. Some dreamers, once airborne, turn toward the very thing that frightens them. a dark doorway, a falling edge, a shape in the distance. From above, the fear looks smaller. Therapists who study lucid dreaming have found that facing a threat within the dream, safely and by choice, can soften its hold in waking life. To rise is not only to flee. Sometimes it is to finally look down. Nightmares can become flight. When a dream turns frightening, becoming lucid offers a quiet choice. Instead of running, you can rise. Clinicians use a related method, called imagery rehearsal, to help people rewrite recurring bad dreams. And lucid flyers often do it in the moment. The chaser below grows distant. The dream, once a trap, becomes open sky. What terrified you on the ground can look almost gentle from the calm air above it. The calm found in flight does not always stay in the dream. Some who practice lucid flying report that the confidence lingers, a quiet sense that they can rise above what once felt overwhelming. Small studies suggest lucid dreaming may support emotional resilience, though the research is still young and gentle in its claims. Whatever the mechanism, many wake feeling a little lighter, as if a part of them remembers, all day, that it once flew. Something has quietly shifted in the question we have been following. We began by asking how a dreamer takes off and steers, and the answer, again and again, was not muscle but permission, not effort but attention. The steering was never really mechanical. It was the mind discovering it could choose. And if the flight was always a choice, then perhaps the sky was never the point. What we have been learning to steer was something closer to ourselves. Here is a gentle truth. Not everyone becomes lucid, and not on any schedule. Some minds slip into awareness easily. Others may try for weeks and meet only ordinary dreams. This is not a flaw. Lucidity depends on memory, sleep patterns, and a kind of quiet readiness that cannot be forced. If it has not come to you yet, nothing is wrong. The door simply opens on its own time, and it opens differently for each of us. The timing varies widely from person to person. A few dreamers fly on their very first lucid night, lifting off as though they had always known how. Others reach lucidity but stay earthbound for a while, learning the sky slowly. Both are ordinary. The dreaming brain is not a machine with a single setting. It is a living rhythm, unique to you, however long it takes. Each night of trying leaves the path a little more familiar. Even a single second of flight is worth having. A brief lift before the dream dissolves. A moment of hovering before waking. These are not lesser experiences. They are the same freedom, only shorter. Beginners often find their first flights are fleeting, ending in a gentle wake or a slip back into ordinary dreaming. That is the natural shape of learning. The seconds lengthen with time, but even the first of them belongs entirely to you. No night of trying is wasted. Each time, you set the intention to notice your dreams. You strengthen the quiet habit of awareness. Even when lucidity does not come, your dream recall tends to grow, and the dreams themselves often become more vivid. The mind is learning to watch itself, gently, in the dark. Flight may be the goal, but the practice itself changes how you meet the night. A little more present, a little more curious. Even if you never fly, much is gained along the way. The attention you bring to sleep can calm a restless mind, quiet the rush of the day, and make the descent into rest feel softer. Many who set out to fly discover instead a gentler relationship with their own dreaming, less fear of nightmares, more wonder at what the mind creates. The sky is one gift among many. Rest itself is the first and truest one. There is a soft paradox at the center of lucid flight. Try too hard, and the effort wakes you. Grip the dream too tightly, and it dissolves in your hands. The dreamers who fly longest are often those who hold the experience lightly. Curious, unhurried, willing to let it be brief. Wanting is fine, but wanting calmly. The sky opens most easily to those who are content, even now, simply to be resting here in the dark. So let the attempt itself be enough. You need not fly tonight, or reach lucidity at all, for the night to be well spent. Set your gentle intention, and then release it. Let sleep come the way it wishes to come. If flight arrives, welcome it kindly. If it does not, you have still given your mind a soft place to rest and wonder. The trying is not a task. It is a quiet kind of play. And the sky is always there, waiting. Each night brings new dreams, and with them another chance to notice, to lift, to fly. There is no last opportunity, no door that closes for good. Even the deepest sleeper dreams 4 or 5 times a night, cycling back toward that vivid, open place again and again. Whatever tonight holds, another night is already forming behind it. Patient, renewable, endless. The sky does not run out. It simply returns. What stays with you is the feeling. Long after the dream has faded, a trace of weightlessness remains. A quiet knowing that the mind can lift, that freedom lives somewhere inside you, waiting. You carry it into the ordinary day, into traffic, into worry, into the small heaviness of being awake. And in a still moment, you remember. You have flown before. Some part of you knows the way, and will always know it. And here, at the end, is the quietest truth of all. The freedom you feel in flight was never really about the sky. It was never the height, or the wind, or the falling away of the ground. It was proof, gentle, undeniable, that inside your own dreaming mind, you were always free. The sky only showed you what was already yours. You do not have to reach it tonight. You are already there. 100 facts ago, flight was a thing that happened to you in dreams. Sudden, uncontrolled, gone before you understood it. Now you know how it begins. Not with a running leap, but with a small hop and a quiet permission. We followed the gaze that steadies a wavering flight, the distant point that gives the dream its direction. We watched fear grow smaller from above, and nightmares turn into open sky. What began as a question about lifting off became an answer about letting go. The freedom was never in the sky. It was in the mind that dreamed the sky. Yours, whole and unbound, even now. You carry that proof into every night still to come. Perhaps tonight's slow journey into the dreaming mind brought a little lightness to something you have been carrying. A gentle like. Subscribe. Or share helps another restless dreamer find this quiet sky too. One quiet tap for everyone still searching for the way here. Somewhere behind your closing eyes, the sky is already forming. Not built by effort, arriving on its own. The way dreams always arrive when the day finally loosens its hold. The ground beneath you is softening. The weight you carried all day is beginning to lift, without your asking. Let your entire being dissolve into that rising. You do not have to steer it. You do not have to reach anything. The freedom was always yours, and it is holding you now. You can allow these thoughts to drift away now, like the ground falling softly beneath a dreamer who has just begun to rise. Let your body grow light, the way it does in the moment before flight. Sleep carries you up into the part of the mind that was always free. These quiet hours have been circling the edges of the dreaming mind for a long while now. The next hour follows a different question the dark leaves open. What else the mind can do once it knows it is dreaming? That hour is waiting whenever you are ready. But if your eyes are closed, stay there. Rest well, gentle dreamer. The sky inside you was never out of reach. Where curiosity ends and sleep begins. Good night.